The following is a production of Mosaic in Whittier, California, a community of faith, hope, and love.
So let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll start with the conversation this morning. Father, thank you so much once again for being a good God who, we just occasionally have those moments of clarity where we sense you present with us. And while our circumstances do not change, we're able to reframe them or reinterpret them because of your presence. We're thankful that at times we wish that you would just wipe out all grief and wipe out all sorrow. And while you've never promised to do that, you have promised to not allow us to drown in it or suffocate in it. I thank you for the celebrations and for good family ties and good relationships, but I'm also thankful that you're present in moments that don't seem to be all that great at times, and you sustain us in those moments. And what I pray this morning is you help me and talk what I know and what you've shared with me, with my friends and family who are here this morning, to your credit and to your glory. Amen. So let me set this up here about where we're going. It's kind of a familiar story. What I'm going to do is tell you a story about a guy named Elijah and some guys who were not on the same page with him, and there was a showdown at Mount Carmel, and there was this moment. And it's one of those kind of stories where when you think it's familiar, the danger is that it's familiar, and so you think there's nothing left to say about it. And this is one of those stories that have shaped my thinking as well, and so there's always kind of something fresh to take away from it. I'm hoping to communicate some of that with you, but briefly, let's see where we're at. We're at the book, actually. What's happening here, some of you know there's King David. He had a son named Solomon. Solomon becomes a king, and there was an issue of taxes that split the country in half. So you have a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Now what makes it confusing is that the northern kingdom keeps the name Israel. But sometimes when they say Israel, they mean just the top half, not the entire nation. The bottom half of Israel took the name of Judah. So there was a kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judah. And the issue was over taxes. That's how the country split. Several years later, there was a king named Ahab in the north. And by the way, this is easy to remember, there was not a single good king in the north. They were all rotten, just horrible human beings, just nightmare people. And so this king was especially just tragic and a mistake. And he married a woman who was aligned with and had given her life over to worshiping Baal. She was a priestess for Baal. Oh, here, good. Let's put this up right here. I get to use this, so be amazed. Good thing you're sitting down. This is, we're going to be here at, this just feels so, but thank you, sir, who got that for me. You know who you are. So this is Mount Carmel. That's where the story takes place. Over here is the valley of Jezreel, also known as Megiddo. Dun, dun, dun. Where's this going, right? Also known as Armageddon, yes. So some of you are thinking, oh good, Russian helicopters, tanks, who's the Antichrist? Nothing like that's going to happen today. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. But that's where that battle, that's where this scene is a scene of another famous battle that's perhaps yet to come. But there's a historic meaning in that. There's this good and bad. Who is God? Who is really God? That's the question we're trying to answer today. Who is really God? Or who is God? And so before I read the passage, I'll just tell you the punchline. So there was, because of the king and his wife, they began to really get into worshiping Baal, who, well, let's go to the next, yeah, great, there you go. Now, I don't know if you could feel this image, because it's kind of cartoonish, and, I couldn't find any photographs, but mercifully, this is Baal made out of stone, or a metal, rather. And down below, there'd be a little bit of a fire going there to heat them up, red hot, white hot. And there would be Jews who worship God, giving their baby over to a Baal priest to put in that. So when you read about the Baals and his, and his wife Ashtoreth, who high sexuality, so this particular worship involved high sexuality and human sacrifice. And so you see something kind of burning there, you get an idea of what's going on. That's when God said, I'm done. I'm done. Once you get to a place where you're able to visibly watch your child being sacrificed, I'm not sure what's left to work with. right? Okay. Now that's not a statement. Well, here's the weird part. They were still holding on to some of their Jehovah or Yahwistic religion. And so God essentially saying, get off the fence. Make a decision. Who is God? If it's Baal, if this is what you want, then stop calling yourselves after me. Don't call yourself Israel. Don't say that you're my followers if you're doing this madness. But if Baal is not God, and by the way, Baal brings rain, Baal brings storm, he's a god of fertility, then if Baal is not God, then what is he? And if I'm God, then follow what I'm doing and follow what I've asked you to do. Follow my values and principles, which, listen, the principles or the values of God, and that word's been so destroyed from the 80s and the moral majority and all that madness. But in the end, know this, that the values of God always enhance life, enhance your humanity. They don't diminish it. They don't erase it. The idea of becoming a follower of Jesus is the idea to step into your full humanity, to become a truly human being, not a Christian. So I'll say this, someone said this, I guess I mentioned this a month ago, and the guy said, I finally got it. I've been here 3 years. I finally got what you meant. Jesus Christ did not come to make you a Christian. He came to make you a human being. And as a human being, looking at Jesus, the perfect human being, there was moments where he expressed anger at what was unjust and what was unfair and what was wrong. There was moments of great agony and service for the care of others. There was moments of generosity, and he had a prayer life. He fasted. I mean, he did a number of things. So if a man or a woman wanted to know what it's like to be a human being, you could say you can point to Jesus. That's what it means to be a human being. Male or female, that's what it means to be a human being. Now, Mount Carmel, if we have an image of this, there's a picture of it. We have a photograph. So that's Mount Carmel. That's what it looks like. It's dramatic when you think of the showdown that happened here. There's going to be about 450 male priests. Well, of course they're male priests. That was being redundant, wasn't I? They're female priests, I guess. Okay, so there's 450 men who are, like that guy earlier, that are priests for Baal. And then Elijah is going to be there alone, representing Jehovah, representing God. All right? Let's have a picture of where this is. So the next plane, right. Now, over here is Mount Carmel. So it's to your back. If you look across the valley, this is the valley of Megiddo. That's Armageddon right there. That's what it is. That's what it looks like. Looks rather peaceful. No Russian tanks, apparently. And over here is Mount Tabor. So this is the breadbasket of Israel. It's extremely fertile, great land, Superman, super loud coat, and you're welcome. That's for you. So over to the east would be Mesopotamia, Assyria, Babylonia, Persians. To the south of this area is Egypt or North Africa. And one more thing before we get into the story. Elijah, the name itself, Elijah, here's a clue to some of these Bible names. Every time you see the word El, it's God. God something, okay? No matter where El is, it means something about God. When you see the letters A-H or J-A-H, it's speaking of, quote, the Lord or Jehovah. So Elijah's name, interestingly, is the Lord is God. Jehovah is God. That's Elijah's name. And so later in the story, when they're yelling, there's going to be a group of people chanting, the Lord is God, the Lord is God, the Lord is God. What they're saying would have been, Elijah, Elijah. And by the way, Elijah's not doing it for him either. Elijah's movement in this moment is not about Elijah. Elijah's movement and activity in this moment is always going to be about God. So there's a couple of keys happening here. The first one is simply this. It's just choose, make a decision. And how many of us we've done that, right? Yes, you're trying to do the right thing, but you got a little bit of darkness going on the side. You're dark, but maybe not as dark as you used to be. But, there's that place. That was actually space and place at the same time. There's that area. It's hard to believe I make a living out of public speaking. There's that area in your life where you're kind of like, well, I'm doing all this okay. Can I have this? And ultimately, Yes, you can. If you want to keep a little spot, just a little darkness you can sniff in there later, just like snuff in your sleeve or something, go ahead. Honestly, Madam, sir, enjoy. But understand this, that there is a sense of fire that you're taking in. And that fire is going to do one or two things. Either it will begin to consume you and diminish and erase your humanity, burn you down to a crisp eventually, or if it's God's fire, it leaves a mark, but it restores. Listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus this morning, you're thinking maybe this is going to be, okay, before you jump in, understand he wishes to consume you, to restore you. Not consume you, leave you down, burned down to a crisp. All right. The second key to this whole thing is understanding that as Elijah moved through this moment, you're seeing God in action. You're seeing him in action. His name tells you what he's about. All right, so let me read the story to you. If you have a Bible, feel free to follow along, or you could just listen as I read it to you. It had not rained for 3 years. And if you're in a desert, that's tough. We have a drought for 1 or 2 years, and even though we're sucking water out of lakes in Colorado and everywhere else, we're still worried. So there's no place to suck water out of. If there's no rain, there's no water. And in the valley of Jezreel, there in Megiddo, that's a problem. Why? Because that's the breadbasket of Israel, still is. And what happened is that Elijah told Ahab, bro, you think you can live this way and not have an effect, not have a consequence? Here's what God says, no water. No water for you. That's what's happening. Obadiah was Elijah's spokesperson briefly, and so Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, troubler of Israel? And Elijah says, Me? I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied. You and your father's family, you have abandoned the Lord's commands and you have followed the Baals. And so what had happened was that Elijah told Ahab, come out, meet me. I'm not running from you. You can find me at Mount Carmel. Bring your buddies. We'll see who's God. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Ashtoreth who eat at Jezebel's table. 850 representatives of a religion that had practiced human sacrifice and sexual activity. Okay. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel, just the north, 10 tribes, and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And this was their response. Nothing. Have you ever been asked to choose? And you find yourself frozen? Because you kind of know, I know this. And you're telling me this is going to be good, but, I'm not. So this shouldn't be too surprising because each of us have done this at one level. Where you're just I don't know. They said nothing. Nobody moved. No one did anything. Maybe they shuffled their feet. And so that goes on. Then Elijah said to them, look, I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left. A little bit of exaggeration. Because he wasn't. But Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood and not set fire to it. All right, hold on a second. So you have to picture this. So first the prophets went up. You saw the mountain. You saw how big it is. So now okay, so now we got to go back down the mountain, get 2 bulls, bring them up. But do you think they just trotted up there, those bulls? Let's go, come on, let's get up there. So it took a while. And the people, what do you think the people are doing? What's always interesting to me in the story is what's not said in the story. Did they just stand there looking at Elijah? Trying to pretend like this is not an awkward moment? Yeah, okay, Elijah, How's that weather? Still dry. Okay, but it goes on. And I'll prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord, and the God that answers by fire, he's God. That's pretty simple. And then the folks thought, well, that's a good idea. We should do that. So they go get the bulls, and they come back up. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, you choose one of the bulls. You prepare it first, since there's so many of you. You call on the name of your God, but don't light the fire. And so they took the bull given to them and prepared it. They made it a red bull. Hey, it's in the Bible. Don't blame the messenger. Just thought of that too. That was so stupid. So then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon, 6 hours. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response, and no one answered. So what you have to imagine is people, these men dancing, chanting. I was going to show you some pictures of some of the self-cutting that goes on still in the name of religion. And I thought, yeah, you know what? Not on Mother's Day. I'll save that for later. But you're going to read what they... Okay, here, watch this. They danced around the altar that they had made at noon. Elijah. At noon, I get this guy. He began to make fun of them. Hey, shout louder. Surely he's a god. And he's a god that, don't call me Shirley though. And then goes on to say... Airplane reference. Perhaps he's in deep thought. Maybe your God's busy or traveling. That's why he's not here. Your God is traveling. Send a text message. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Maybe he's sleeping. He must be awakened. So what did they do? They shouted louder. And then they slashed, look at this. They slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until the blood flowed. So you imagine a hot day, they're sweating, you're cutting, how that looked. Okay, not good. Midday passed. They continued their frantic prophesying until the time of the evening sacrifice. How many hours is this? This is 6 to 8 hours. I don't know what it sounded like. That was not an actual recording of the moment. But here was the result. No response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Hold for a second. I want you to understand that there's a couple of words. How many of you get creeped out of the word moist? Oh, some of you do. Okay. That's a cry for help. I get that. Maybe one day you'll learn to love yourself. I don't like the word fair. I truly don't. Every time my wife and I hear someone say, well, it doesn't seem fair. Like, oh my gosh, what are you, 10? Can we just, as adults, agree that there's no such thing as fair, and fair is meaningless? When married couples talk to my wife and I about, yeah, we divide the household chores because that's the fair thing. Fair? That's how you're measuring it, on fairness? I was in class the other day when there was a situation that came up where for advanced Spanish speakers, como yo, they like myself, we had an opportunity to do something for extra credit, and those who were a little bit, lame in the language, they could not. And then one girl said, "That's not fair." Like, oh my gosh, you're at a university. Act like an adult. Life is not fair. Now, here's the thing why I said that. If the story of this book is true, there is one God and nothing else. And some of us automatically, and if you're thoughtful and reflective, I get this. That doesn't seem fair. What about other cultures and countries? Okay. Yet at some level, this God is speaking to you right now. What are you doing? How is that fair for the other cultures and countries that you're not sharing this information? If the story is true, and I believe it is, I'm convinced that it is, the good news is God is saying to us, there's no one else but me. Why would you connect with something that's not based in reality and think that you're going to thrive and live with that? And so this verse, this little passage, it's like this tragic commentary on humanity. That all our cries and all our attempts to connect with something beyond ourselves ends up with no one answered, no one responded, no one paid attention. All right, let's go on. So then Elijah said, well, come here to me. So, maybe folks backed off because they were splashing. Who knows? And people came closer. They came to him and he repaired. Man, that's a beautiful key also in this this metaphor, he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. So here was there was a place where people had sacrifices or worshiped God or reminded themselves about God that had gone to disrepair, deteriorated. The first thing he did was began to kind of put that back together. Great metaphor for our lives. Sometimes the thing that you're looking for is the thing that you left. So Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it. So this is taking time. He's working at this. Enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. Okay? He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars of water with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. That's an expensive commitment. Why? It hadn't rained for 3 years. Where are they? In the desert. So Elijah is rolling all the dice on this one moment because of, at least how can I put this? Probably English would be good, right? This is not cockiness. This is certainty of the one I know. And see, you can't pretend this. Either you know it or you don't. And if you don't know it, that's okay, because you can get there. But if you know it, you go like, yeah, I think I'm certain this is what God will do. But often, to be frank with you, I find myself saying, I know things about God. I know he's kind. I know he's good. Okay. All right, so it goes on. Then at that point, he says, do it again. And then do it a 3rd time. So it's drenched with water. The trench is filled with water. So you got to imagine bloody, sandy, dirty water. Yes? Okay, so it's all wet. The wood is wet. The bulls is wet. Blood, water everywhere. All right, it goes on. At that time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed. Now listen to his prayer. Because it's, I don't know, 5 seconds. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you're God in Israel, and that I'm your servant, and I've done all these things. Look at that. This is what people miss. At your command. See, this is not Elijah being ticked off that people don't worship the God that I like, and blah, blah, blah. Like I said, look, would you please tell the people to choose and do this so that they'll come back to life instead of this madness that they're doing. This is always God's reaction to us. And I think at times, because we sense there's a bit of anger, that we think it's anger at us. It's anger at darkness. Always. You don't properly love something until you really hate its opposite. You don't really love kids if you don't hate children that are being trafficked. Yes? Okay, so you understand the dichotomy? And so if you sense, like, why is God so angry at us? Not at us, at darkness in us, at darkness that we get ourselves wrapped up into. And so here's God saying, look, I told Elijah to do this. And so answer me, Lord, answer me. For what reason? So that I don't look foolish, so that I can be proven right, so that folks know that I'm not ridiculous. No, answer so that they know that you're good, that they know that you're calling them back, that you're getting them a do-over, a second chance, that you love them, that you're not angry, that you give life, that you're the true God. That's my purpose. And for many of you, you know why God doesn't actually speak to you any longer? Because you're trying to use God to establish yourself. You're trying to win the argument with him. You're trying to prove you're right in your politics or whatever. And so since you don't have any real, gravitas or power of your own, you snatch religious language, you snatch things out of the Bible, wrap yourself around it and say, thus saith the Lord. No, thus saith you fool. God has nothing to do with that. I'm going to dial it back a little bit. I'm getting excited here. So I realize that. Okay, I got it. So that they will know, Lord, our God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Listen, you have to feel this as the great the great romantic from heaven, calling people back. I love you. Why would you do this? I give you the gift of children, and you burn them alive for crops? Are you kidding me? I could give you rain for your crops. Why are you killing your children for this? I'm trying to give you life. I'm not trying to diminish your happiness. I'm not upset if you're happy. All right, it goes back. Here we go. Then the fire of the Lord fell, burned up the sacrifice, burned up the wood, the stones, the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. And when the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried out, "The Lord is God. The Lord is God. The Lord is God." Yep, he is. So let me just wrap this up briefly with a couple of observations. And here's what I'll ask you to do. You don't even have to buy into this right away. But consider that this might be true. And if it's true, does it help you interpret your life? Does it make sense of stuff that has happened to you? Here's the first thing. God is a fire that consumes. He is a fire that consumes, period. There's no, you can't, I don't know. I guess you can sort of dip your toe in it and not really be into it. But fire, fire is not God, but God is a fire, period. And he expresses himself by fire that is consuming and, listen, a bit dangerous. Think of how many of you have ever had, any of you ever have your house? I'm going to break up this horrible moment here. Anybody have a house that burned down, or you lost a property, or, okay. Polly's Pies is gone. No more Polly's Pies. You've seen fire. Perhaps you know someone that it was burned. They have a scar still. In forest and in nature, fires hit. Can be very destructive. In many cases, of course, like, it releases seeds for the trees to grow. But fire, listen to me. Fire always leaves a mark. Always. You cannot touch fire and not have a mark on you left. A building, an animal, a nature. The difference is that the fire of God consumes but does not destroy. It's more of a, let me just burn off some of this crap and nonsense that you've been having so that this is a purer, healthier life, a beautiful life. So going to the next one, fire from God doesn't destroy. There was a time that everything that fire touched, it destroyed and consumed, even if you wanted it to. How many of us have been camping or gone to a beach trip where you have to take wood for the fire, right? You go, I'll take a stack, or what is it, a committee, or what do you call that? A group of logs? A core? There's really a name for it? Okay. A bundle. Thank you, sir. I'll go with that. That sounds reasonable. A core of wood? All right, so you take a bundle of wood that's been cored. Okay. There was a time when when fire always consumed completely if it was allowed to burn, and you have to feed it and stoke it, yes? But you realize now there's a fire that doesn't consume and destroy, but actually gives life. This is why it's one of our core values. And everything that fire touches, the fire that doesn't destroy, the fire of God, is made whole, is made healthy. Period. How many of you have ever done tortillas on the stove? Right? Thank God. Isn't that just so good? How many of you put the tortillas off center so that you don't reach in and touch the fire? Yeah, right. Those of us who are almost white or coconuts, we do that. My mom would reach into fire, put her hand in there, turn it over, just no smoke. How do you do that? Years of experience, mijo. Years of experience. Glad you're enjoying it, madam. Fireplaces are always nice, aren't they? The crackling of wood, the smell of it all. Fire's attractive, but dangerous. Now here's the thing about, we treat God like fire in this way. It warms us, smells good, crackly. But we don't get too close because we don't want to be consumed. We know, you and I intuitively know that if we connect ourselves to a supreme being, something's got to give. Yes? But the thing that it does consume or destroy is darkness, distortion, disfigurement. A couple months back, there was a friend of mine from Biola, no longer a friend. No, there was a friend of mine said, I like your church, but you never mentioned sin. Really? Are you listening? Dr. Corey, look, here's the thing. Thank you. I'm here all week. Good night. So if I say darkness, brokenness, disfigurement, so for those of you who are old school and you like, God consumes sin and leaves behind a human being. God is a fire that is from the sky. You know, there's a bit of danger with fire, of course, right? You don't want your kids playing with matches. Oh my gosh, I used to play with matches all the time as a child. Ohio, strike anywhere matches. Why would they sell a child a box of wooden matches? You know, you build little houses and then you would light one and watch it burn down. My wife remembers when the kids were tired of the toy, or I was tired of it, we would burn it and just watch it. I was a kind of a fun but dangerous dad. And yeah, there is warmth, there is illumination, and there is a danger when you come into contact with God. Because you can't really fool him, nor isn't there's no area of your life where he doesn't say, that's mine, and I want to touch it by my fire. Your sexuality, your money, your career goals, your family, nothing. It's like, can I have this? Like, oh. And by the way, he'll let you keep it. This is what's so strange to me about God. He takes you on any terms. You know, he wishes to marry us, and we still want to date. He says, all right, I'll marry you. I'll be faithful to you as a married spouse, and you can go date. So who is God? Who is God? Here's the thing. You get to choose. You can tell who is God in your life by the fire that you're choosing. Period. How's it leaving you? Some of you have a certain thing. It may not even be bad. It's just that it's not leaving you whole. So let me ask you, whatever you got going on in your life, is it working for you? Is your life working? Are you becoming a wiser person? Are you becoming a more generous person? Are you becoming a more courageous person? Would people describe you as a healthy person? Then why not just get rid of that nonsense and choose the fire from the sky that doesn't consume and doesn't destroy and leaves you with a beautiful life? Why wouldn't you choose that? Choose a beautiful life. Choose the fire from God. Lord, I pray this morning for my friends. I pray for family members. Pray for people who have called themselves your followers, and we're screwing around with fire that is consuming us and leaving an unhealthy mark. So, would you help us just be able to make that decision and decide? Would you help us, would you force our hand? Force us with the reality of what we're doing. Open our eyes to at least see so that we're no longer being goofy and pretending that we don't know. And what I also pray is for folks that have just heard the wrong story about you, people who have misrepresented you. You are a God who loves, heals, restores, sets free. Your Son tells us his mission is not to condemn, but to rescue. How did we get this strange story about you that you're just angry at us? And I'm so grateful that you've told us the truth. There's no one else but you. There's no one else out there but you. There's no one else coming for us but you. You love us. Who's a God like you? So, this morning, we're grateful for the good things you have given us. family, friends, jobs, food, dance, music. Help us to be grateful by repaying you, by giving our life back to you. Touching by your fire to become a beautiful life. In your Son's name, amen.